They thought their software could erase me, but I'd make them choke on their mistake. This new software makes your position redundant, my boss explained, while terminating me after 14 years as fleet logistics manager. My name is Wesley Carter, 41 years old, father of 2. I nodded like it made perfect sense, while Quentin Morse, the operations director at Morse Freight, explained how their new logistics program would save the company nearly $225,000 annually. "You're throwing away everything I built," I said, voice tight with barely restrained fury. Quentin shrugged. "It's just business, Wesley." My salary and benefits made up most of that figure. "We've uploaded all the routes and client specifications," Quentin said, not quite meeting my eyes. "The AI optimization is supposed to be 25% more efficient than human management." I listened without interrupting. My blood boiled. 14 years of sweat and trust, dismissed by a smug suit who'd never driven a route. 14 years meant nothing against a quarterly earnings report, not the late nights tracking shipments during blizzards, not the countless hours spent building relationships with clients across the country, not the emergency routes I designed when Hurricane Delta shut down half our southern corridors. The software could supposedly do it all better. "We'll need you to train Liam on any remaining processes during your notice period," Quentin added. Liam was 24, fresh out of college. His job would be pressing buttons when the software told him to. "Train him to fail?" I shot back. Quentin's jaw tightened. "Just do it, Wesley." "No problem," I said, still calm. The termination letter sat between us like something dead. 3-week severance for every year served. Fair enough on paper. I cleaned out my office that afternoon. Pictures of my kids, a logbook I kept of every major client's specific needs and quirks, a folder of routes I'd personally optimized for perishable goods, routes that shaved hours off delivery times by accounting for traffic patterns the GPS data missed. The folder went into my bag. Nobody asked about it. Awkward handshakes, empty promises to stay in touch. Only Nora from dispatch seemed genuinely upset. Who am I supposed to call when everything goes sideways now? "You've got the program," I reminded her. 25% more efficient, remember? She rolled her eyes. That thing doesn't know what to do when the Baxter dairy shipment arrives at the same time as the Frost Peak meats truck. You know Baxter needs special handling. Their containers leak if they sit too long. I patted her shoulder. "I'm sure he'll figure it out." "They're fools," Nora whispered, her eyes fierce. "You're the heart of this place." I managed a grim smile. "Not anymore." On my way out, I passed the boardroom. Through the glass, I could see Quentin showing the executive team colorful charts, cost savings, efficiency improvements, return on investment. I wondered if they'd factored in the cost of losing 2 decades of relationships I'd built with clients from Omaha to Helena. I didn't slam doors, didn't make a scene, just walked to my truck, set my box of belongings in the passenger seat, and drove home. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white. This isn't over, I vowed. But something in my gut told me this wasn't over, not by a long shot. I started at Morse Freight, back when we had just 8 trucks and a dream. Old man Morse hired me himself. "This company runs on relationships and reliability," he told me. "Technology changes, people don't." Those words stuck with me while I built our logistics system from scratch. Every client had different needs. Frost Peak needed their meat shipments delivered by 5:00 a.m., so their butchers could prep for the morning rush. Baxter Dairy's tanks had to be emptied within 25 minutes of arrival, or the pressure valves would leak product. Sunnyside Produce needed their shipments routed away from highways where diesel fumes could seep into their organic vegetables. I knew these details because I'd spent years learning them, years earning trust. "You're a lifeline," Frost Peak's manager once told me. That trust was my currency. When Old Man Morse retired 6 years ago, his son Gideon took over. Younger, MBA from Cornell, always talking about disruption and leverage. That's when things began to change. First came the consultants, then the cost cutting, then the glowing reports about automation. I watched it happen but kept my head down and did my job. The drivers trusted me, the clients respected me. I figured that counted for something. My wife Abigail noticed the shift before I admitted it to myself. "They're phasing you out," she said one night after I mentioned the new software they were installing. "You should start looking elsewhere." I brushed it off. Nobody knows the system like I do. The software needs human oversight. You're too loyal, she warned, her voice sharp. They'll betray you. I ignored her, stubborn to a fault. But the writing was on the wall. The quarterly meetings where I used to present our logistics metrics were now handled by the tech team. My emails to Gideon went unanswered. Quentin started making decisions about fleet management without consulting me. 3 weeks before they let me go, I got a call from Philip Grayson, operations manager at Sterling Logistics, Morse Freight's main competitor. Just checking in, he said casually. Heard Morse Freight is making some changes. If you ever want to grab coffee, let me know. I told him I was fine, loyal to the end. Don't be a fool, Philip said, his tone blunt. They're replacing you. I hung up, dismissing him. The morning they fired me, Abigail didn't seem surprised when I called her from the parking lot. What will you do now? She asked simply. Take some time off, figure things out. But that night, after the kids were asleep, I pulled out the folder of routes I'd taken from my office. Routes the software would never understand, because they weren't just about distances and fuel efficiency. They were about knowing that Officer Caldwell always set up speed traps on Highway 14 on Fridays. About knowing the loading dock manager at Frost Peak wouldn't accept deliveries during his lunch break, no matter what the schedule said. I stared at the folder, anger rising. You'll need me soon, I whispered, dialing Philip Grayson. 3 weeks after my termination, I was sitting in a booth at Sally's Diner with a cup of coffee and my laptop open. I'd been tracking Morse Freight's deliveries through contacts I still had at client facilities. The picture wasn't pretty. Baxter Dairy had logged 3 late deliveries in 12 days. Frost Peak reported a shipment that sat unrefrigerated for 50 minutes because of dock scheduling conflicts. Sunnyside Produce found their organic lettuce spoiled after a truck took the interstate bypass I always avoided because of the heavy industrial emissions. I wasn't happy about it. These were people I'd worked with for years, but I wasn't surprised either. My phone buzzed. A text from Nora. Complete disaster today. System routed 3 trucks to same loading bay. Baxter's shipment delayed 2 hours. They're furious. Another buzz, this time from Ray, one of Morse Freight's veteran drivers. New system had me go through downtown Omaha at rush hour. Lost 80 minutes. Nobody to call for override. I didn't respond to either message. Not my circus anymore. But I made notes in my spreadsheet tracking the pattern of failures. They're falling apart, I thought, a bitter satisfaction growing. The bell above the diner door rang. Philip Grayson walked in, spotted me, and slid into the booth across from me. Thanks for calling, he said, ordering coffee when the waitress came by. Been hoping to hear from you. I closed my laptop. I'm not looking to burn bridges. Philip shook his head. Not asking you to, but Sterling needs someone who understands logistics from the ground up, not just from algorithms and data points. You don't use automation. We use it, Philip said, but as a tool, not a replacement. Tech doesn't build relationships, doesn't understand why the Baxter family insists their products be delivered first thing Monday, even though Wednesday would be more efficient. Doesn't know that Frost Peak's dock manager needs military precision or he falls apart. I studied him, trying to read his angle. So, what are you offering? Consulting to start help us understand these client relationships better, eventually maybe something permanent? I thought about 14 years of institutional knowledge walking out Morse Freight's door in a cardboard box, about a software program that couldn't possibly understand the nuances I'd learned through thousands of hours of problem solving and relationship building. I won't share proprietary information, I said finally. Philip nodded. Don't need you to. Just help us understand what these clients actually need, not what some algorithm thinks they need. I sat back, fingers drumming on my closed laptop. Through the diner window, I could see Morse Freight's headquarters in the distance, glass and steel reflecting the afternoon sun. When can I start? I asked. Philip smiled. How about right now? You're giving me a chance to strike back, I thought, shaking his hand. I'm taking it. I didn't feel vengeful, didn't feel like I was betraying Morse Freight. They'd made their choice, I was making mine. But as I opened my laptop again and began explaining the real needs of clients like Baxter and Frost Peak, something shifted inside me. A quiet determination replaced the hurt and confusion of the past weeks. I wasn't done. I was just getting started. The fire in my gut burned brighter. I'd show them what they lost. 1 month into my consulting work with Sterling, I got a call from Quentin Morse. "We need to talk," he said, voice tight. "Some of our clients have been asking for you specifically." I was in my home office reviewing Sterling's delivery protocols for temperature-sensitive items. Through the window, I could see my kids playing in the backyard, enjoying their summer break. "I don't work for Morse Freight anymore, Quentin." "Look," he said, lowering his voice, "the transition hasn't been as smooth as we anticipated. We're willing to bring you back as a consultant to help fix some issues." "Already crumbling?" I said, a smirk tugging at my lips. His silence was answer enough. I leaned back in my chair. "Issues with the software?" "Minor adjustments," he insisted. "Nothing serious." Gideon authorized a very competitive consulting rate. I thought about the data I'd been tracking. Morse Freight had lost 9% of their on-time deliveries in the past month. Client complaints had spiked 35%. 2 smaller accounts had already jumped ship. "Send me the offer in writing," I said. "I'll think about it." Abigail found me still sitting at my desk an hour later. "Morse Freight called?" I nodded. "They're struggling." She sat on the edge of the desk. And nothing. I've got a good thing going with Sterling." "But you're tempted," she observed. I was. Despite everything, I'd built that system. Those client relationships meant something to me. Maybe I could help both companies. Abigail raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Don't let them pull you back," she warned later. "They don't deserve you." The next morning, I drove to Morse Freight for a meeting. The receptionist didn't know me, directed me to a conference room where Quentin, Gideon Morse, and Liam were waiting. "Wesley," Gideon said, rising to shake my hand, all smiles now that they needed something. "Appreciate you coming in. Let's get to it," I said, taking a seat. "What exactly do you need?" Quentin opened a laptop. "The system is functioning as designed, but there are certain client-specific requirements it's not accounting for." "You mean like Baxter's leaking containers or Frost Peak's loading dock schedule?" Liam looked up sharply. "How did you know we're having issues with those clients?" "Because I'm not an idiot," I snapped, leaning forward. "Unlike your system." I didn't mention my ongoing contact with their staff because I spent 14 years learning their quirks. "That's why I'm here, right?" Gideon cleared his throat. "We'd like you to document these special considerations so we can program them into the system." The request hung in the air. They wanted me to download 14 years of experience into their software so they could finish replacing me. "And you're offering?" $6,000 for 3 weeks of consultation, Gideon said. "Very generous considering." I looked at the 3 of them. Gideon, who decided algorithms were better than people. Quentin, who couldn't meet my eyes when he fired me. Liam, who knew just enough to be dangerous. "No," I said simply. Gideon blinked. "Excuse me, my knowledge and relationships aren't something I can just transfer to a program. That's not how this works." Quentin leaned forward. "Wesley, be reasonable. This is a generous offer." "It's not about the money," I said, standing up. "What you're asking can't be done by a consultant in 3 weeks. It takes years of direct client interaction." Gideon's face hardened. "We've heard you're working with Sterling now." And there it was, the real reason for this meeting as a consultant. "Yes, is that a problem?" "We consider that a conflict of interest," Gideon said coldly, "especially if you're sharing proprietary information about our clients." I felt a flash of anger but kept my voice steady. "I've shared nothing proprietary, but it's interesting that you're worried about that while simultaneously asking me to give you everything I know." "You're scared," I said, voice cutting. "You should be." "We'll be watching very closely," Gideon warned as I headed for the door, "and reaching out to our clients to ensure no inappropriate solicitation occurs." I paused in the doorway. "Maybe you should focus more on keeping those clients happy and less on what I'm doing." "Just a suggestion?" As I walked through the parking lot, my phone buzzed with a text from Abigail. "How'd it go?" I typed back. "They're scared." The call came 4 weeks later. I was in Sterling's main facility revamping their cold chain protocols when my phone lit up with Nora's number. "You won't believe what happened," she said, voice low like she was hiding in a bathroom stall or empty stairwell. "Frost Peak just pulled their business, entire account gone." I set down my clipboard. What happened? 3 shipments arrived with temperature damage in 2 weeks. Their CEO personally called Gideon. It was ugly. She paused. "Baxter's making noise too," and Sunny sighed. "The software still isn't working." Nora laughed bitterly. Oh, it's working exactly as designed, perfectly optimized for cost efficiency. Just turns out that's not what our clients actually need. They're imploding, I thought, a surge of vindication rising. After we hung up, I stared at the Sterling loading dock, watching the coordinated dance of forklifts and trucks. Philip walked up beside me. Everything okay? I hesitated, then decided on honesty. Morse Freight just lost the Frost Peak account. Philip raised an eyebrow. Big loss. Any idea who they're moving to? Not yet. I didn't mention that I had already submitted a proposal to Frost Peak on Sterling's behalf last week, anticipating this very scenario. Not technically solicitation since they had reached out first. That night, I received an email from Roger Frost himself. Dinner tomorrow. Need to discuss shipping options urgently. Overstakes the next evening. Roger didn't mince words. Your old company is a mess, Wesley. 3 shipments of prime beef spoiled. Do you know how much that cost us? I nodded sympathetically. Automated systems struggle with specialized requirements. Damn right they do. Roger cut into his steak aggressively. Gideon kept insisting the software would adjust, learn from its mistakes, but it kept making the same errors. What did he say when you terminated the contract? Roger's laugh was harsh. Tried to blame the drivers, then offered a discount. Never once admitted their fancy system was the problem. He pointed his fork at me. You knew this would happen, didn't you? I warned them, I said, voice steady. They didn't listen. I took a sip of water. I knew there were aspects of the logistics that couldn't be easily programmed, yes. Well, Roger said, leaning back, I've reviewed Sterling's proposal, the one with your name on it. Competitive rates, dedicated routing, specialist. That's you, I assume. I nodded. When can you start handling our deliveries? Immediately. I've already prepared your specific protocols. Roger smiled for the first time that evening. That's what I want to hear. On my drive home, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was Ellen Baxter from Baxter Dairy. Wesley, she said without preamble, we're having serious problems with Morse Freight. Heard you're with Sterling now. They're bleeding out, I thought. The weight of their failure settling in. The following week, Sunnyside Produce called, then 2 smaller clients. I didn't reach out to any of them first. I didn't have to. They all knew where to find me. When I told Philip about the growing list of former Morse Freight clients wanting to move to Sterling, he just smiled. Guess we'll need to fast-track that permanent position we discussed. That Friday, I drove past Morse Freight's headquarters on my way home. Through the glass facades, I could see people working late. Crisis mode. I felt a twinge of sympathy for the employees who had nothing to do with the decision to replace me, but then I remembered Quentin's words. This new software makes your position redundant. They had bet everything on technology, forgetting that logistics isn't just about algorithms and efficiency, it's about people, relationships, things a program could never understand. I didn't set out for revenge, but I wasn't going to turn it down when it fell into my lap. You made your bed, I muttered, glancing at the fading Morse Freight sign. Lie in it. By the 3rd month after my termination, Sterling had signed contracts with 6 former Morse Freight clients, including their 3 biggest accounts, Frost Peak, Baxter, and Sunnyside. My new office had a window overlooking the loading docks where I could watch the precision choreography I had helped design. Philip knocked on my open door one morning. Just got off the phone with Pinnacle Foods. They're jumping ship from Morse Freight, too. I looked up from my computer. That's their 4th biggest account. Was, Philip corrected with a smile. You free for lunch? The executive team wants to discuss your permanent role here. As we walked to the conference room, Philip lowered his voice. Heard through the grapevine that Morse Freight is in serious trouble. They've laid off 12% of their staff already. The news didn't please me as much as it might have. Those were good people losing their jobs because of bad decisions at the top. Any word on the software? Philip smirked. Apparently they've hired 3 consultants trying to fix it. Too little, too late. After a productive lunch, where I accepted the position of Senior Logistics Director at Sterling, I returned to my office to find Nora waiting for me. Hope you don't mind, she said, standing awkwardly by my desk. Security let me up when I mentioned your name. Everything okay? Nora twisted her hands. They laid off 9 people from dispatch yesterday. I'm still there, but she took a deep breath. Are you hiring? I studied her face. Tired, worried, but still determined. As a matter of fact, we are. Let me introduce you to HR. You're saving us, Nora said, her voice breaking. No, I replied. We're rebuilding together. Over the next 2 weeks, I brought on 3 former Morse Freight employees who had been casualties of the company's downward spiral. Good people who deserved better. One evening, as I was leaving the office, I found Gideon Morse waiting by my truck. Came to see the operation for myself, he said, hands in his pockets. He looked thinner, the circles under his eyes pronounced. Impressive setup, I waited, saying nothing. You've taken half our clients, he said. Finally, we're filing for Chapter 11 next week. I leaned against my truck. I didn't take anything, Gideon. Your clients left because you couldn't serve them properly, because you wouldn't help us fix the system. No, I corrected him, because you thought a system could replace human knowledge and relationships. Your father understood that technology is a tool, not a replacement for people who understand the business. Gideon looked away. We've got 58 families losing jobs because of this. The statement was designed to make me feel guilty. It almost worked. That's on you, I said quietly. Not me. We're willing to sell, Gideon said suddenly. Sterling could acquire our remaining assets, routes, equipment. It would be cheaper than watching us slowly collapse while you pick off the rest of our clients one by one. I considered him for a long moment. I'll talk to Philip. You're begging now, I thought, his desperation stark. But I'm not your savior. As Gideon walked away, my phone buzzed. A text from Roger Frost. Perfect delivery today, like the old days, but better. Glad to have you back handling our account. I stared at the message, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Satisfaction, yes, but not joy at Morse Freight's collapse. Just the quiet certainty that actions have consequences. The next morning, I presented Gideon's offer to Philip and the Sterling executive team. There's value there, I explained. Equipment, some good people who deserve a shot, and a few remaining client relationships worth preserving. Philip studied me. You're advocating for the company that fired you. I'm advocating for a smart business decision, I said, and for the employees who had nothing to do with that choice. Philip nodded slowly. Draft a proposal, we'll consider it. I spent that weekend creating a detailed acquisition plan, not out of revenge or triumph, but because it was the right move for everyone involved. Sometimes winning doesn't look like what you expect. But as I worked, Abigail's words echoed, don't let them pull you back. Their failure wasn't my burden, yet I felt its weight. 8 months after my termination from Morse Freight, I stood in the lobby of what used to be their headquarters. The Morse Freight logo had been removed from the wall, replaced with Sterling's blue and silver emblem. The acquisition had gone through 4 weeks earlier. Quentin Morse approached, hand extended. Wesley, thanks for meeting me here. I shook his hand briefly. Philip said you wanted to talk. Quentin glanced around the busy lobby. Is there somewhere private? I led him to a small conference room and closed the door. Quentin took a seat, looking uncomfortable in the unfamiliar surroundings. I've been offered a position in the transition team, he said, reporting to you, apparently. I nodded. That's right. Quentin looked down at his hands. After everything that happened, I'm surprised. This isn't about personal feelings, I said evenly. You know the operation. That knowledge is valuable during the merger. Even though I was the one who fired you, I leaned forward. You were following orders, Quentin. We both know that decision came from above. He seemed to deflate slightly. The software was a disaster. We tried everything to make it work. Except the one thing that would have worked, I pointed out. Understanding that logistics isn't just about algorithms, it's about people. From the hallway came the sounds of the facility in transition, workers moving equipment, new signs being installed, employees from both companies learning to work together. Quentin looked up, his expression a mixture of resignation and relief. So where do I fit in the new structure? I slid a folder across the table. Operations coordinator, working with the team I'm building to integrate human expertise with supportive, not replacement technology. He opened the folder, reviewing the offer letter inside. This is more than I expected. It's what the position is worth, I said, standing. Technology changes. People don't. Your experience has value, Quentin. You're giving me a second chance, he said, voice low. No, I replied. I'm giving Sterling what it needs. As we walked out, Gideon Morse was coming through the front doors for a final meeting with Sterling's legal team. Our eyes met briefly across the lobby. No words needed to be exchanged. The outcome spoke for itself. I felt no joy, only a hollow ache. His defeat was mine once too. 1 year after being told my position was redundant, I stood in Sterling's control center, watching my logistics system. Human screens showed optimized routes, but driver notes and client quirks glowed brightest. The human touch Morse freight ignored. Nora approached with a tablet. Baxter Dairy's forecast, 12% up. Make sure Ethan knows their valve issue, I said. He's on their account while I'm at Glacier with Abigail and the kids, my first vacation in years. Philip joined us. Board's thrilled. Quarterly numbers stellar. Client retention unmatched. Your human-centered approach paid off, he said, clapping my shoulder. Later, I checked a Frost Peak shipment. Tom, a veteran driver, avoided Highway 14's construction, ignoring GPS. Trust your judgment, I told him. The software helps. The irony stung. Fired. Yet I'd built something better. But as I drove home, the facility's lights fading, I felt the cost. Years of loyalty, trust, given to a company that discarded me. Sterling was home now, my family's laughter waiting, but Morse Freight's shadow lingered, a reminder that vindication heals, but never fully mends. I'd won not by revenge, but by proving what they'd lost, a truth both sharp and bittersweet.